I have been studying black magic and occultism as of late. It's something that has been at the end of my almost religious studies. I've studied more or less the majority. I've been a part of the Christian church. I've studied some of the Hindu stuff and a little of, the Muslims, etc., kind of all out the world. And as I have come along in my studies, something I've continually brushed into is the occult knowledges, esoteric, etc. And it has been something on the flip side of the coin that has completely reaffirmed and reshaped my perspectives on many things about what I believe the world is and how things work. Now, this is something that I can't say that I am a believer in. And a lot of this stuff, it's very deep and it has many ways you can approach all of this as far as religion and just philosophy in general. This stuff, though, is no one will talk about it. I know next to nobody who will even bring these things up when talking about religion. But what's interesting is when you look at, for example, the Bible or other these characters who practice these dark arts are always in it. And they are these people who have power in these books. They're not dismissed. For example, in Egypt, the sorcerers who worked for Pharaoh, they could cast spells, turning staffs into snakes, and they could turn water into blood, and Moses could do all the same, etc. And there's tons of this. And what is interesting is the idea would be that they are onto something and they understand how reality works, and they also are able to tap into some types of power. Now, I want to preface this. Some people, you can look at a lot of the religious studies as representations of Jung, like Carl Jung archetypes, and these ideas can be kind of presented as metaphor, but they also can be interpreted as real. I would like to share with you some of what I have learned, and it's a mix. The deeper I get into studying religion, it all has to do with your identity, your soul, your mind, how you perceive and what you think, because we are what we perceive, and what information we take in and what we put out. So, starting with all of this, we have identity. The idea is that we all have a divine spark. Our identity is aligned with the source. We as individuals wish to be a part of or be at one with the source and live on and on. Now, at some point, we believe we come to an end, that our bodies are our beginning and our end. We believe we could be worse off than we are. This is called fear. The root of all fear is the fear of death, the ultimate end in our minds or representation thereof. When we believe that a certain action or event could lead to death of our physical bodies, we have a response of fear. This can be extended out to the far reaches, and the smallest of incidents can be interpreted to having a cause and effect event series that lead to our death. And in some cases, people can develop what are called phobias, where a seemingly non-dangerous or whimsical thing can be interpreted as being something worthy of fear. For example, the fear of clowns, many adults have this, where there is nothing rational to be afraid of when it comes to another human wearing makeup and odd clothes. But there is something the individual has interpreted as a threat to their existence that can, in many ways, perhaps through association of stories where clowns are psycho killers and pop culture stories, be a threat. Now, fear of death could be a rationally explained and reasonable event. However, in the light of a larger perspective, fear and death are the least rational of any positions you can have as a human. Death as an end represents the cessation of creation, no longer having the ability to part or to be a part of or contribute to creation, to no longer be a co-creator with the creator. This is the first death, the death of the body, right? A second death is to stay completely cut off from creation. This would be hell or Hades, the underworld as it's described in many other names. This is a place of stagnation. There is no communion with God in this place. In this place, no new things are made and burdens are to be suffered unending. There is no improvements, only cancerousness, repetition to noise. Forcing results that do not harmonize. You are identifying with the self and maintain self, not identifying with the whole and how you are a part of the whole. It is when we wish to maintain a singular identity and remain how we are that we then, by our own doing, are cutting ourselves off from the growth of creation. So, bringing this to the most rooted and deepest stories we can that go back thousands of years, we get to the story of Satan. Satan wished to be God, to have all power as it is. Satan wished not to be a part of God, but to be his own and separated out from God, to have all for himself and to have a different identity than he had to have. God's identity is what he wanted. Satan could not have all if God existed, because by definition, Satan would have to be separated into another reality where he was the one source in that reality in order to have all. You couldn't have the two competing. So it was a conundrum. There cannot be two all-knowing beings. By Satan's own action and intention, he separated his own identity from God and was cast out of heaven. Now, Satan was more than likely aware of this, though being cast out. A new domain where God does not exist or is less present is where Satan and his angels ended up, on earth and in hell. Satan got what he wished for, separation from God, so he could be the ruler of his own realm. The problem is creation comes from one source, and all Satan and his angels can do is take what God has already created and attempted to build with it and create. He cannot steal the position of being the original source that is already started. God is already the one who is, and Satan wishes to be that. So he must leave the reality that God is in completely in order to be the origin source of his own reality. This puts them in a state of scarcity where no new things can be created because he is not the source. And they must take and hoard what they can in it in this new or fake realm that they inhabit. There is one source of new creation in this. There is one source of new creation in this realm they can take from to create from and build their own reality separated from God, and that source that they can draw from is humans, right? It's the only source on earth or wherever that has that divine spark. Because we have a divine spark within us, we can bring new things into this world and we can shape reality. Now, I'm hyper generalizing a lot of this. This is the synopsis from everything I've studied, right? But the premise is that Satan himself is not a creator, in that because he's separated from the source of creation, he has to steal it. And when we are born, we have that divine spark within us still being connected, and he must somehow tap it out of us, right? Now, Satan and his angels cannot make new because they have decided to completely cut themselves off from God internally. They must tap into the humans that can bring life force into reality through the ether by taking it from the humans. This is where the idea of human sacrifice, vampirism, and demon possession come from. So, a little side note, the word demon, right, is a Greek word. Now, originally, the word demon was the word for gods, such as Zeus or, Pluto or whoever it was that Poseidon, etc. The Greeks just called them the demons. And then in the Bible, with the translations at the time, it got separated out and then they kept the Greek word demon. So, really, when you say the word demon, you're just saying the word gods, but in Greek. There's a little more to it. So continuing on with what we wrote here. But yeah, demon possession. If Satan and his angels can separate a human soul from God, they can break the connection from the vine and bring them into their realms, Satan and his angels' realms. So they can add to their reality, tapping into the divine spark of humans who have a close connection to God. Now, how do these demons do this? They start with fear. They need humans separated from God. To do this, they have to start with getting humans to separate themselves for the demons first. This happens through influence. Influence of humans subtly. Think of back to the garden with the snake and the apple and all this stuff. So it is argued that demons can mostly only interact with humans through, let's say, possession, or during very specific times with, lunar and planetary cycles, things like that, or where there is psychic energy that is strong or strongly imprinted on certain locations, such as a place that is considered haunted. These are places that the veil is thinnest. Also, when humans' inhibitions are lowered the most. So, while consuming large amounts of alcohol or drugs, the only time a demon can influence a human due to their awareness and aura being dropped is when there are these special moments. It is said the reason demons must act in this way is because long ago, when man first began, demons did roam the earth. They were called giants, Nephilim, jinn, and many other names. But then a cataclysm of some type, such as a flood, came to earth and wiped their bodies away. And now their souls, unable to return to the Creator's source, since they have cut themselves off, wandering the spiritual plane separated from God, and attempt at every chance they get to return to the earth plane into a body, preferably human, and only can do so to a human who is willing to let them in. Such as a vampire can only be invited into a home but not enter uninvited, or one who is weakened spiritually, and a demon can force their way in. Once in, a demon can begin working on their task to separate humans from God and any other form of creation to take back to their realm they are trying to build out so they can be masters of their own universe. How do they separate humans from their divine connection? To start, many of their own universe, how do they separate humans from divine? Start, many humans over time naturally separate from God. As they age, they begin to struggle and have worries in life. These worries steal their joy and cause anxiety and fear that separate them from the inner creative flow and energy due to trying to maintain their bodies and stop the death of their physical bodies. This is why it is said that children are closer to God. They have not had the chance to have many burdens upon them that would cause them to disconnect. This is why in many dark religions, when human sacrifices are performed, the younger the offering was, the more pure the more pure they were, such as a virgin, the more creative power that individual has, like throwing the virgin into a volcano. Also, another aspect of this idea may be occultist, made by the occultist, is less less civilized cultures are generally more spiritually connected because a beast system has not been implemented into their cultures as strongly yet. Examples, according to occultists, would be Africans, Celtics, Islanders, or Gypsies. The child or the virgin has not fell into the frame of human society, becoming stifled and having to follow the rules that are bred from scarcity, such as a woman who is a virgin has not yet fell under frame of her husband and become stifled from rules she is under either. Now, when these sacrifices are performed, it is very theatrical, right? This is intentional. The purpose is to stir up as much fear in the individual being sacrificed as possible, creating a terror over their own death, so that such a deep fear of death of their body happens, they resist their own passing into the next life, clinging to their body from the torture and torment of their sacrificers. And then, with such resistance, their soul cannot return to God, but goes to the realm of their tormentors, where they can harvest their soul for creative force to build Satan's own creation. But Satan must bind these souls in hell in a continual state of torment. So the identity of the individual soul will continually resist the acceptance of death of the body, trying to fight to get back to their physical body, which will stop them from moving on back to their creator and source in heaven. This is why Christ is so inspiring in this scenario. Because at the end of his life, after his interaction with Satan, where he was offered the world on a mountaintop, Satan then had him sacrificed. He put him on a cross and tortured him to an extreme. Now, it wasn't Satan himself, it was through his people, right? Would be the idea. But yet, still, through all of that, Jesus would have let go of his body and his identity of his physical self and instead identified with his soul and his Father who is in heaven and defeated the sacrifice because we already have it all when we let go. And what is old, we are let. So when we let go what is old, we are letting in what is new to come in. So this is like the metaphor of, or the story, maybe some of you have heard of this, is like a monkey will reach into a jar for a nut and hold on to it. But because it is holding on to a nut, its fist cannot pass back out of the jar. And it will not let go of the nut until, well, it never will let go of it. And it can never get away because it's stopping itself from, getting out. It just has to let go to become free again. Now, there are also those who wish to join Satan. This is the darker side of this. And join his realm to rule a corrupt and knockoff realm. These are his followers, and they can be found in any religion, really. And many people do not even know they are practicing his system. Often found amongst occultists and psychopaths or serial killers. Many times they're even unaware they are practitioners of Satan's mission. Individuals who wish to be gods themselves and have all for themselves are aligned with Satan and separating from God to create their own reality where they can hold onto their own identity of self, where instead they are just vessels for God to exist in and experience the reality of creation God himself has made. To the individual who is aware of this system, separating themselves from God is an intentional act. They perform rituals and practices to intentionally cut themselves off from God and the creation. They do this by killing off their own soul. All of us are born with what can be called a conscience. or an intuitive understanding of our true mission to create and add to creation for the growth of the universe and growth of the Creator. But to hinder that process and destroy our consciousness or willingness to be a part of that process would cut off our souls and identity from God. Satanists or occultists, even serial killers, do this so they can rid themselves of their conscience, so they will no longer be inhibited in their minds, torn between both a natural urge to serve creation and to serve themselves, or Satan's mission. It is unbalanced what they are trying to do. A Satanist will achieve this by taking a pure soul and tormenting them to the point of terror, and then killing them as a sacrifice to both kill off their own consciousness, adding to creation, and to take a soul with them to Satan's domain if possible. This grants the Satanist power, for now they are no longer bothered with a nagging conscience. They once had that tormented their mind with conflict of God's mission of creation and their own mission to pursue their own desires of survival. Their mind is now unlocked. They become lethally intelligent and not bogged down by serving two masters. Their cunning will increase. Their cunningness will increase. An ability to become coldly calculated and ruthless in all endeavors will allow them to do whatever it takes to achieve their aims. Also, as they do this, they open themselves up for what would be demon possession and gain the power and knowledge of the fallen angels to achieve the mission of Satan, that is, to create another realm where all in it are striving to be the one God of it, but all in that realm will turn on each other if it suits their purposes to become the most powerful in it. That is why their mission, that is why this mission of theirs will never succeed, because they will sabotage each other in a race to the bottom to selfishly have all for themselves in separate realms cut off from God. It is only through alignment with God and being at peace with His mission and taking our roles that we can live on forever in a harmonious state where taking is not the path for betterment, but growth and cultivation of creation unlocks new levels of reality. Amen. So this is drawn from many books. This is something that I had written just today. These are a synopsis, a 10,000 foot perspective on what is happening. Now, the story throughout religions mostly all mirror each other or rhyme. There's somewhat of a threaded singular story through them all. I use the word Satan, which is obviously more of a Middle Eastern name, Satan, Satan, however you want to. The adversary, whoever you want to call him, right? And from a first principles perspective, if we look at reality from very, very basic ideas as far as identity and opposing, mirroring, fractal, all this stuff, these ideas are in alignment with those. And it would give a good narrative, what I just wrote here, as to explaining what is going on. Now, from what I've read of these people in the occult and whatnot, they take this stuff very serious as far as they think it's all real. Their reasoning of why they're doing all this and how they think it's working is a bit different. And a lot of these occultists, they actually draw from multiple religions. It's not really just one source of info they're pulling from. They think that sacrifice is not that big a deal because they think that we will reincarnate, and it's the idea of death to them is not a sin in that killing someone else so much for the purpose of sacrifice. They think that some of them, it's really more of a very flattering thing to do for God is to give up a human like that. But also there are the others, the Anton LaVey's and Aleister Crowley. They think that do as thou wilt because you are God in and of yourself, and that you can do whatever you want because that divine seed or spark that's in you is just God acting out what he wants to do. There is no right, there is no wrong in many sense because everything is God's choice, right? My perspective in all of this is that your soul, your identity, who you are, your conscious label of your self, right, will go on. And there is a high likelihood that if you do cut yourself off from the origin source, the creative source, then that soul is going to end up in a place you don't want it to. It, even in, from what I understand, I'm not super read on it, but in Hinduism or whatever, um, if you reincarnate so many times and you end up unsuccessfully ascending in your reincarnation, you will for a time go to a place of torment. And all throughout religion, your soul has to be purified. Your soul has to improve and be in more alignment with God. I'm not interested in practicing any of this satanic occultist type stuff. And really, all it's done is sharpen my mind in understanding what is happening, what is kind of the general story of humanity and what we are in this universe, this whatever we're in. So hopefully some of this may have given you a bit of a different perspective as to what is going on and understand what is our true purpose and mission here. And that is to seek truth, create, and to be in alignment with growing out the universe for a better existence. So that's all for today. Thank you guys. You want to talk? Hit me up in the comments. Like, subscribe, please. Bye.